everybody, got another guide video here today for you. Today we're going to be covering Pyromancer. Pyro is one of our more competitive DPS specs. It does good single target, good cleave, pretty easy to play, all around good spec for sure. The spec is 61 Pyro, 11 Warlock, 4 Elementalist. The 11 Warlock, we go 3 out of 3 in improved life leech, 5 out of 5 in magical affinity, 2 out of 2 in Lingering Pain, and the main reason we're going into Warlock is Nedra's Grasp. 1 point in that, and make sure it's legendary. The legendaries in Pyromancer are Full Slide, sorry if I butchered that, Internalize Charge, and Firestorm. For Elementalists, we go 4 out of 5 in Biting Cold, and we pick up Elemental Forces. There's a couple different variants of this spec. There's the Warlock one that we'll be going over today, and then there's also 11 Harbinger, picking up legendary Piercing Beam. This is just the one that I've chosen to go with. I feel it's a little better. I could be wrong. I parsed 4 or 5 times on each of them, had a little better results with this one, so I stuck with this one. I like it a little better as well. If you do not have your second to last or your last eternal, you're going to want to put pick up Arbiter for your third off soul and pick up legendary Galvanic Strike. You only want to go Elementalist if you have your second to last or your last eternal. For the Masteries, from left to right, bottom to top, it's 3, 3, 4, 3, 3. Yeah, that's the spec. Now we'll go over the macros and how everything works. All right, we'll go over the macros first. First macro we have is our spam macro. Cast fulminate, contaminate, arcane manipulation, internalize charge, elemental forces, countdown, searing bolt, inferno, flame bolt, fireball, and burning shield. The next one we have is a heat wave macro, essentially your cooldown macro. It's the same as your spam, except it casts heat wave and prioritizes fireball over everything else. The next macro we have is an interrupt macro. Then we have an AOE macro, which is just cast firestorm at whatever target you have selected. Then we have a cinder burst macro. This just has internalized charge, elemental forces, and arcane manipulation in it, so you're not ever missing, or to make sure those are active before you cast your cinder burst procs. These other 3 are more for convenience. I just have countdown and flame bolt tied in with elemental forces. The third one here is a pre-pull macro. Just casts arcane manipulation, elemental forces, and internalized charge on yourself pre-pull. If you're trying to min-max your DPS, you should be doing this. If you have the hard variant, the only thing different is you replace this cast not active contaminate with charged blade. Everything else is exactly the same. And if you don't have your second to last eternal or your last eternal, and you're using the arbiter variant, not the elementalist one, the only thing that you do is remove elemental forces from your macro and from all the macros that it's in. And that's it. Everything else is exactly the same. I will list all these macros in the description as well, so if I missed anything or you want to look at them in a little more detail, you can see them all there. Yeah, next we'll go over the rotation, putting it all together and how it works. Right, first we will go over the abilities and the only buff we get. The only buff we get with Pyro is Pyromancer's Armor. The whole point of Pyro is to cast Cinder Burst as much as possible whenever it's available to be cast instantly. Our Pyromancer's Armor gives us a 20% chance, or gives our fire spells a 20% chance to make Cinder Burst become instant cast, as well as another ability in the talent tree called Pyromancer's Vengeance, which ends up giving us another 10%. So essentially, we end up having a 30% chance for Cinder Burst to become instant cast. This little RNG base, sometimes you get a lot of them, sometimes you don't get hardly any at all. So it can be frustrating at times. Moving on, Countdown. Countdown also puts a debuff on the target called Accelerant, which increases your fire damage by 10%. Flame Bolt, when you cast this, it gives you a buff called Improved Flame Bolt that increases your damage by 10%. Nedra's Grasp, the main reason we went into Warlock, the only reason we went into Warlock, is when it's legendary, you get Lingering Torment, which increases your damage by 20%. We will be refreshing this with Dark Touch. Firestorm gives the target a debuff, increasing our fire damage by 30%. Fireball also refreshes this and applies it, so you can apply it with the Firestorm AOE, or you can apply it with the Fireball. Yeah, for the rotation now, we start off with Dark Touch, followed by Firestorm. Then we go Countdown, Flame Bolt. Then we go into our cooldowns, starting off with Full Slide. I always butcher that, sorry. Then moving to our Heat Wave macro. And mind you, too, we are casting Cinder Burst whenever it's available. So if we get a proc during this this rotation, we will cast it. You kind of want to make sure you have all of your damage modifiers up before then. So you know your Flame Bolt, your Countdown, your Nedra's Grasp, your Firestorm, if you can. Then we would go to our Heat Wave macro. We would use this until Heat Wave has expired. We will have K alerts for all of these abilities, tracking them. And we're refreshing Flame Bolt and Countdown whenever they fall off. Excuse me, we're not refreshing Countdown, we're refreshing the buff that we get from Countdown called Accelerant. Sounds like a lot, it's really not. We're just monitoring 3 things basically. We're having to refresh Flame Bolt, Countdown, and Dark Touch is pretty much all that we'll be refreshing. So that pretty much covers the key abilities. Now we'll go over the rotation and I'll put it all together. You can see how it works. All right, so just to recap before we start, we're going to start off with Dark Touch, Flame Bolt, Countdown, Firestorm using Cinder Burst whenever we get them. And then we're going to go into our first cooldown, Full Slade. And then we're going to go into Heat Wave, and then our spam macro. We're going to be manually refreshing Flame Bolt and Countdown whenever they're about to drop off. Normally your spam macro will take care of these, but while you're doing your cooldown block and in Heat Wave, you will end up having to manually refresh them if you want to keep them from falling off. You will always have to manually refresh Dark Touch. Right, so we make sure we got our Pyromancer's armor up. Cast a pre-pull macro. Start off with Dark Touch, Flame Bolt, Countdown, Firestorm, Cinder Burst, first cooldown. Cinder Burst again. Then into our Heat Wave, refreshing Flame Bolt, refreshing Dark Touch, Cinder Burst, Countdown, Flame Bolt, Cinder Burst again, back to Countdown, or excuse me, Heat Wave for another second. Into our spam macro, refreshing Dark Touch and Flame Bolt. And that's pretty much the entire rotation. You just rinse and repeat that. DPS is sucking a little bit because I'm trying to talk while I'm doing my rotation. I normally hold about 1 million to like 1.1 million, depending on my Cinder Burst proc chance. But yeah. So those are the basic fundamentals of 61 Pyro. A little bit of practice and muscle memory, you'll have it down, no problem. I'll put a link in the description for all the K alerts, the macros, a link to a written guide as well by one of the guide writers on the forums, to the mage spreadsheet and whatnot. Thanks for checking out the guide video. If you're interested in any more, I have some more on my YouTube channel. I've been making them recently. I enjoy making them. If you got a certain guide that you're interested in, let me know. I'll try to make it. Also, if you watch streams at all on Thursday nights, 6 p.m. server, I stream whatever raid we're doing. Right now we're doing Bastion of Steel, obviously. And I was figuring every time we kill a boss, I'll give away a loot supply crate or whatever the current supply crates are to people randomly in the stream. So yeah, if you're interested in any of that, check it out and have a good day. Thanks for watching.